Hey there.
Hey, Heather, and hey, everybody. Welcome to your best year ever for 2025. I'm John Patrick Morgan. This is Heather Quick. And we're here to do episode five, which is the third week, which is the third of five, which is the conversation around drum roll. I need sound effects. Your being is primary. That's the shift. That's the key. This is the idea. This is like the third idea out of five ideas that if you take this on, next year will be the best year of your life. Mm-hmm. And that sounds like a big promise. It sounds grandiose. Now, and it is if you just think of an idea, a new idea, because that can make a difference, but not change my whole life. Well, I think for most people, an idea won't change their life.
Sure.
But for some people who take an idea and revolutionize the way that they think and act because of that idea, and it can't not change their life. So if you think back in your life, you, the viewer, the live viewer, replay viewer, if you think back in your life, you can probably think of an idea that somehow came into your mind that changed your life.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you that all five of the ideas that we're sharing over these 5 weeks, each of them alone can do that. I've seen them do that to myself. Heather's seen them do that for her. We've seen it do it to our clients over and over and over again. So these are the ideas that have the cream rising to the top of all the ideas in the creating perspective that have been most transformative on people's lives when they take it on. So that's an important thing.
Yeah.
So this your being is primary. And I was just saying to Heather before the call, oh, look at that. It's on my mug. So my mug says we are creating, and being now here is primary. This is a little, I usually have logo facing out, like laces out, like in, what was that movie, Ace Ventura? But logo out facing you guys, but facing me is this reminder. We are creating and our being now here is primary. So what do we mean by that? Oh my gosh, there's so much to unpack.
Yeah.
What is being, first of all? What do you think being is, Heather? What does that mean to you? I've talked about it a lot. What do you say?
Sure. Yeah. The most practical way I explain it is, you can take one sentence, one word, 2 words. Let's say the words thank you. Mm-hmm. And depending on your being, they could come out in a multitude of ways. When my kids are instructed to say thank you and they're not really feeling it, they're like, thank you. Right? When I'm feeling lots of gratitude, right? Like, thank you. So the being is expressed is what is expressed through us beyond our actions.
Yeah.
Right? You can do the same actions in a multitude of beings, and you will be expressing a multitude of things.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I mean, you use the example of just being a nice person or being an asshole. You can say the same thing being either of those things.
Yep.
And the being comes across.
Yes.
And how this ties in with the other stuff that we talked about, especially the first, idea shift key here, is that we already talked about, you're creating everything primarily through who you're being. Right. Primarily. The way I think, whether or not you take an action, so all results are preceded by an action, right? Let's just be Newtonian about it for a second. Yes. All results are preceded by some action. So whether or not you take that action is of course a result of the way you're being. If you're being procrastinating, if you're being fearful and hesitant, then you're not taking action. And then of course you're not going to create results. Right. But the more surreptitious, the less obvious place that being is hiding in the creation of your world is that it is influencing the quality of the action that you take. Yes. So you could be taking action all day long.
Yes.
And you could have a being, like a classic one in my world in this work is for people that are sole proprietors. They're selling their own service, whether they're a coach, real estate agent, whatever they do, they are the product, they are the service, and they're selling it. And it's very easy to get caught up in your head about, do I have the value? Are people going to like me? Blah, 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 blah. And you get in this state of scarcity and worry and concern about people think, and you're being concerned about what people think about you while doing all the right things, taking all the actions, having all the conversations, writing all the posts, writing articles, all the things. So you're doing all the you can be in action all day, every day, and you can create no clients or income,
right?
Because your being is undermining your action,
right?
And there's nothing that I think I'm just thinking about this now. There's nothing that undermines a person's willingness to keep going than I'm doing all the things and I'm taking all the action, but I'm not getting the results. And we've
So
heard people say that, right? Like, I
common.
feel like I'm due the results by now.
Yep.
I'm doing the things.
It should have happened. Right.
It
It
should
should have.
happen by now. I'm doing all the things.
Yes. Yes.
But doing it's not enough. You got to
Mhm.
be. It's like I'm saying the right thing. Yeah, but you're being a jerk. You know, it's like it's. I use these examples because it
Yeah.
makes it obvious.
Yes.
So this thing that we say in an extreme scenario, I am suggesting is always the case. It's
Yes.
always going on.
Mhm.
Every single thing you do, you're either getting a result or not getting a result from the world because of who you're being.
Yeah.
Let's use the other example we talked about earlier. Everybody knows what it means to hold the being as primary when you think about the being of yourself with your partner in a relationship, like if you're an intimate relationship, right? And you guys are getting heated and starting to argue. And you know, at least in the back of your head, that like if we continue down this path, we may get to a resolution, but it's going to be ugly, it's going to be messy, and it will be at the cost of our connection.
Yes.
I might get to show that I'm right, or they might get to show that they're right, but we're not sleeping in the same bed tonight, or whatever it is, you know? And so for me, when I'm at my best, I am holding being as primary, not just for my emotional state, but who I'm being in relationship and who we're being in the arc between us, me and my partner, my wife. And so like, we're getting really, you know, I say something, she says something, and suddenly we start to get heated. And I say, you know what, instead of trying to get to the result of this, let's like back up a second and let's be with like what's creating this experience between us.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's having a meta conversation. Sometimes it's just like slow down, forget about it. Let me give you a hug to reconnect. Right. But what that action, that choice to make the quality of our connection more primary than wherever we might have gotten if we continued this conversation, that is what being as primary is.
Yes.
Right. Between two people.
Yeah.
But for me, my relationship with another person is synonymous with my relationship with myself.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm in a bad mood or I'm like frustrated or whatever, like I am experiencing that thing that I'm experiencing through that internal dialogue, maybe outside of consciousness, but there's a conversation happening inside me that's creating agitation.
Yes.
And problem for me on the inside. And so liberating myself from that in the same way that I would endeavor to liberate myself with my partner from that is primary.
Mm-hmm.
I guess one thing else I want to say about this too is that like, I don't mean being at peace is primary.
Right. Right.
What were you going to say there?
Yeah. That there's not one specific correct being. Like when people work with you, they're learning to create the being that will create what the results they're looking to create in the world. There's an experience you're creating in yourself in that, right?
Yes.
And then there's being able to notice being and being able to notice what it's like, is this being leading to the results that I'm looking for, right? And being aware of yourself on that level. That's what I was, noticing when
you. Yeah, and it's also like, you know, a peaceful being's a great place to create from, but there's other like a passionate way of being.
Yeah.
Or a connected way of being, or you know, a confident way of being. There's just like layers.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the word being gets used for multiple things. There was also like just being, you know, like just like oneness beyond thought, language, meaning. That's like that's a thing. That and so in a way, the word being can point to the place that is beyond words.
Yeah.
But what we're using here is more in the technical sense. A Heideggerian meaning of being is Martin Heidegger is a philosopher, and he has a book called Being in Time. And this being is like the expression of a human being.
Yeah.
So it's a very human thing, right? Because it lives in meaning and language.
Yeah.
And there isn't it actually. So we learn this, you know, we don't come into the world being in this sense.
Right.
We learn to be through creating and understanding narrative and story and patterns. And so, which leads us to like kind of the more nuts and bolts of how this becomes practical. Is it is largely our thinking and the language that we use to represent reality and ourselves that is the source of our being, this kind of being, the quality of our being.
Which so much is unconscious, right? So,
Most of it.
yeah.
Yeah. It's weird how you come into the world with no language, and then
Yeah.
you learn language, and then you learn to consciously experience something, do something, be something, and then that gets completely relegated to the subconscious, unconscious,
Yeah.
automatic operating system. The same way that you learn to drive a car, right? You learn to be like, think about your kids, right? Like they learn. My son like learns to be deceptive.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
4-year-old right now is learning to be deceptive. He didn't come into the world knowing how to be that. He figured it out by watching his brother.
Yeah.
Right. And now he's creating the being of deceptive.
Right.
And at some point, that will be an unconscious competence
Yeah.
where it may just be expressed without him even meaning to or realizing it in relationship to another person, in relationship to himself. It becomes an automatic way of being. The more complex personality styles and stuff, they're all modes of being.
Yes.
In fact, this is a really classic thing, is that people believe that a personality is like fixed.
Yeah. I was having the same thought. Right.
Yeah.
You think so much it's who I am or it's who they are. Right.
Right.
But it's adopted ways of being, created ways of being.
So much. I think I said in a webinar or in a talk we did recently, like, I used to be such a dick in high school. I mean, literally, like, my friends were like, they loved me. They were my friends, but they were like, Morgan's a dick. Morgan's an asshole. Like, those are it's his sarcasm was just brutal, And I consciously woke up to that in a way that, like, well, I kind of always knew it, but I thought it was funny. But I just hit a point in my early 20s of maturity where I was like, it's not actually funny.
Yeah.
And it was actually when I got my mom and my sister sat me down, because I had moved back in with my mom for a while, and they were like, told me about how they were really hurt about how I was being. And I was like, oh, that's that. And it's like, wow, I felt really hurt that I hurt them. And I just was like, I'm not going to be that ever again. And I changed, it became, because I woke up to it, and I already saw it, but because I saw it in a different light and I made a decision to be different, like that, it just changed. I thought I was going to be that way my whole life. I thought that's who I was.
Right.
That personality, that style. Right. I was always a person who just ate whatever. I used to say food is fuel, doesn't matter. Just give me calories.
Yeah.
And then after my multiple sclerosis diagnosis and meeting my wife, who was more health conscious, I shifted to become like a super health nut. We actually moved to Santa Monica from London in part because we were freaking weirdos in London, because we were, eating really like, well, the foods that everybody in Santa Monica eats, like really nuanced and stuff, and health foods. But my point of sharing these little stories is that, like, your entire personality can change.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say entire, let's not be absolute, but so much of it can change.
So much.
Right. And you can be different. And like, the way I used to be in relationships was so different than the way it is now.
Yeah.
Even the way I was with my son, who's 8 now, when he was 2 or 3, I can see the contrast so much in how I am with my younger son. Yeah. Like, the second kid gets a totally different dad.
They really do. I know.
It might not get as much exclusive attention, but they get a way better dad.
Yeah.
Because I'm being different. Yeah. So this is all to point out that we are changing.
Right.
And when you wake up to the fact that your being changes, you can take a conscious role in that. And you can just like the rudder on the back of a ship. It's a little bit of something, but it makes a big difference over time.
Right.
And really, you can really change who you be. And the way you change that is the way that you think about yourself in the world. There's other things that are sub-thought. You can change the way that you breathe. You can do energetic work and the patterns of your movement and stuff, like, sure. But being is largely expressed through meaning. Right. And through ideas. Heidegger says language is the house of being. It's the structure of being. So you change the language, you change the house. Yeah. There's a TED talk out there. A lady did research on just like different languages and like the different ways of expression that people have because of the language they grew up in. Like, some languages are harder, like the romantic languages versus like Slavic languages, maybe like, warmer versus harder. And you can feel that in the energy of the people, right? There's an abrasiveness in a harder language, and it's not coincidence, because that being lives in the harshness of the language. Yes. So yeah, there was something I was going to ask you to share about too. Do you remember what it was about being?
A couple examples, and then I have my thoughts on my I can describe in the work how new being is created, right? Through working with you and through helping other people.
Yes.
And it is really basic, like a really basic level of human, but it's deeper than most people ever go in their entire lives, right? Into
Mm.
understanding themselves and understanding their power to create who they be in the world. Um, and so how I think of the process is first noticing, having the capacity and being in the practice of noticing your thoughts and how they make you feel,
Hmm.
right? Noticing that
Yes.
you have a narrative going on in your brain and that,
Mm.
my heart rate changes depending on the words that I
Yeah.
hear myself think, right? And then my being is coming out of that, right? So it's constantly being created. There's kind of a default creation going on. And first just really noticing that and getting the
Yeah.
reality of it. And then if you can
Well,
be
let
with,
me just can we
yeah,
stay with that for a second? Because I just took a deep breath and I looked out at the horizon because I was like, "Fuck, that's like most of it." And I kind of skipped over it and forget sometimes because I live so much in that. But like,
yeah,
it's not the case for like a lot of
most
people and
people,
people close to me too. And I'm just thinking about like, man, what it's like to be embedded in your experience all the time and be convinced
yeah,
that the experience you're having is because of something out there.
right. That's
And you
full,
really, you do need to see what you're saying, Heather. A person needs to see what you're saying, that it's actually the inverse.
yeah,
Nothing out there is creating my experience inside.
right.
It's creating the possibility of my experience, but it is how I metabolize that external circumstance, the
Stimulus.
meaning I make of it, that produces my entire experience.
Yes. The meaning you make of it. Right.
The meaning I make of it. I mean, it's not like it has a little bit to do with it. It is
Nope.
all of it.
Yep. Because
100%.
two people could see the same stimulus and create two drastically different experiences, stories, experiences, and then beings.
Yeah, but even more than that, like the same person could
Mhm.
create two different stories in the course of the day
That's
and
true.
have two
A
different
minute?
experiences.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Like, man, yeah, our being is the primary source of our experience. And
Yeah.
it's almost like everything that's happening in the world is just raw material.
Yep. Just ingredients.
It's like it's
Mhm.
like just raw earth, and then we're like turning it into things
Yeah.
and experiencing it on the inside.
Yeah.
It's just raw sensory input, and we're generating our world from the inside out. Now there
Yes.
happens to be like resonance with other people so that we can work together, but it doesn't mean that like we're never both having the same, like that classic thing. People at some point in your life, you wonder, I wonder if everybody, when they see the color red, if their red is the same as my red.
Yes. Yes.
Maybe not
I
everybody, at least you and I think about that. But like,
Yeah.
it's that like when you realize like, oh, wait a minute, we may be creating different experiences and
Absolutely.
having similar responses to that and expressing something that we then make up as the same, but it might not be the same for us on the
I mean,
inside.
I think we have that thought when we notice a difference in how someone else perceives life than how we do,
Yeah. That's why
right?
traveling was so good for me when I was young, to go to different countries and be like, oh my God, they have
Yeah.
a different opinion about things than, or who's driving on the right side of the road, the
There was a
correct side of the road.
there
Yeah.
was an article about food preferences, and they interviewed people from all over the world. I have this; it's in this book we have, and there's like two places where people didn't understand the question, "What's your favorite food?" They were like, "What?"
Mm.
Right? Like these are here. I'll show you. These are
Oh,
the.
they don't even have, oh, I see. They don't even
They
have
don't
the
have like
concept. It took me a minute to even get what you were saying. Yeah.
they don't have like a preference. Like, do you like this food better than this food, or what's your favorite flavor?
Right.
They were like, "This is the food that we eat. Look, I'm showing you." That's all they could. What?
Yeah.
Right? Intelligent people, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
not how they talk about it.
Favorites is something that only exists in a context where you have more choice than like, you have enough choices where that becomes a thing where you're not going to have all the things or stuff in some way. So interesting.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And so um, your being is primary because it creates the way that you feel and act, and it creates the quality of your actions, and it is the foundation and the primary mover of the efficacy of your action, which is
Yep.
generative of your results. So if you want to have more amazing life, more of the money that you want, a better relationship, just more ease in your life, more health and fitness, you've got to look at, who am I being in all of these areas?
Yeah.
Who am I being?
Yeah.
And the shift in that is going to get obviously more action, but also way more effective action, way more results. I guess you're right. Let's think of another example. What's an area we haven't talked about? I talked about business. Let's talk about health and fitness.
Yeah.
This is like our theme this month in
Oh my God.
Creator's Journey, right? And
Yes.
We Are Creating Community.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. My big shift in language, which I've heard other people do, since I guess there's two big for my health and fitness. One, the first, I was, I guess, in my teens, and it was the first time that I was like, I want to lose some weight. I want to change my body. And first I just started shaming myself into it. Like, there's something wrong with me. So I was coming from a being that there was something wrong with me. Right. And that created a certain experience while I was working out, that it created a certain experience when I'm looking in the mirror, and certain results. Like, I wasn't making much progress. And I was a lifeguard and I worked at a gym, and I said, wouldn't it be fun on my breaks to swim laps? Right. Like, what would be fun? I started with that. And then I was like, oh, what would it feel like? Right. Like a being of curiosity. Ooh, how could I take the best care of myself? What would be the best thing I could do for myself? Right. Because I had blocks of time between my lifeguard shifts in the stand. And I was like, ooh, what would be the most amazing to do that would create the most amazing experience in my body? And then all of a sudden I dropped weight so fast. I was like swimming on one break and going on the exercise machine the other break. I'm getting compliments left and right. And I like forgot that I was set out to create an actual change in my body. There it showed up. Right.
What was the new being?
The new being was, what would I love? And I'm sure I didn't even have those words then. Those are the words.
Yeah, you didn't have it. Well, I heard it. And maybe this, let me just feed this back to you, but also for everybody. And this is even for the people that are in our programs, in Creators Journey. This is a deeper piece of being that we don't usually talk about, so we get kind of more advanced. It's later in the Creating Being course. But essentially one of the ways of being that you created is, I am that swimming is fun.
Right.
Right. And so we phrase it that way because we usually think of being as an identity statement.
Yeah.
But anytime you're speaking, I am that, and then you have something is something after, what's actually being created is the being of a world.
Yeah.
So what comes after that is thing is thing. Something is something. It's called the conceptual mapping. This is in the work of George Lakoff, a cognitive scientist, that we map reality with the verb to be in the center of two other things. So like money is liquid would say that what we know about liquid would inform our experience of money.
Yeah.
Versus money is object, which is like, it's something heavy to lift. Money is liquid. Oh, it's just something that flows. I can just, build a little stream and it comes into my world. So this metaphorical difference creates a big different experience. And so we have these mappings that live inside of our subconscious that generate our experience. So swimming is work. Yeah. Is going to be an experience that has you move away from that if work isn't something that you're drawn to.
And I should
Some people are
right?
Yeah, because if work is something that should be done, then you've got work should be done. Swimming is work. I'm going to move away from work because it should do it, because I don't want to do what I should do, that kind of thing. But if you create the idea, swimming is fun, that's the creation of a world.
Yeah.
What is the world?
Yeah.
What is being. And so being isn't just, that's one of the things that I think distinguishes our work. It's not just about like, what are your personal beliefs about yourself? No. We go way past that. That's a small slice of the pie.
Yes.
What is the world that you're living in?
Yes.
Are you living in a world where swimming is fun? And this is why we can get so much growth for people without having to like go into childhood traumas and stuff. Cause it's like, there's so much stuff that's having way more of an impact on your experience because you're being something common that other people be that has you not do that.
Yes.
And whenever you meet somebody who has mastery in a domain, it's like, it's not because they're so liberated from the things that they were, happened when they were a kid. It's just that they've got a map of the world. They have conceptual mappings that make that effortless for them.
Yes.
They've got swimming as fun in business, in their relationship, whatever it is.
Yes.
And so I'm always listening for who a person's being and what they are being, but I'm not just listening for identity statements. I'm listening for how a person constructs their reality, what is. And when I talk about being, I mean not just the being of your identity, I mean the being of the world that you immerse yourself in.
Yes.
And so let's present two questions for people to reflect on this week before we come back on Friday and we take it a little deeper. The first is the one that we talked about earlier, which is, who am I being right now?
Mhm.
In any moment, if you're frustrated or if you're like crushing it and having a great time or whatever, just start asking, who am I being right now?
Yeah.
And so that will lead you into an inquiry into like, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? What are my assumptions about myself?
Mhm.
Right. And the other question, I'm just trying to create it in the moment for this kind of distinction about like being is also what the world is.
Yeah.
Um, what is it that I'm assuming is right now? Like, or what, look, let's think another way. Um, what am I believing about what is? What do I, I guess the question is what is right now? I mean, it's a harder
Yeah,
one to think
and then
about,
listen
but
to how
like,
you answer,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
How you answer.
Um, yeah, like, what do I believe is? I guess here's a better way of looking at it, because I want you to start to become present to and conscious with the way you're constructing your experience and your reality by the language you use in your head. So I want you to start just scanning for how you use the word is
Yeah.
or was, right?
Mhm.
Something is something.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, work is heavy, or it's
Yeah.
like, taxes are due,
Yeah.
like are. Oh, that is. I'm just a. So because the reason I want to present this is we take for granted the word to be,
Right.
is, are, was, right? We skim right through it as if it's fucking fact and absolute truth.
Right.
But it's just an idea. Every single time that word is invoked, it's just a possibility that's being created. And if we
Yes.
can start looking at something is something, as if we can zoom out and be like, that's not the absolute truth that I'm embedded in. I can be like, oh my God, something is something. These are that.
Yeah.
This was this. That's just a perspective. I can actually take a piece out and put a different thing in. I can swap them around. I can do all sorts of things with that. Then we start to become, at least at this point, aware of how we're constructing our reality and constructing our being by how we make sense of the world, not just the ideas we have about ourselves. So that's like the one question is, who am I being right now? And the other thing is like, where am I using the word to be? Just
Yeah.
like super fast without even realizing it, starting to become aware of it.
Yeah.
I think if people do that over the next 5 days and they come back on Friday, they're going to be like, whoa, right? Just like,
Absolutely.
wow.
Absolutely.
And then on Friday, we're going to give them a question that will help them to not just create more awareness, which is what we're doing today, but to like become agent and of being,
Yes.
become generative of being, that will help them to, take that conscious role in the activation and cultivation of being. Because being is also a habit, right?
Yes.
You could be something, but you ideally want it to continue to happen automatically. So we want to also cultivate that habit, a new being habit. So
Yeah. Learning
yeah,
to define being, I mean, it's like having a magic wand.
it is.
So like
It
having
is.
a wand. Yes.
Yeah, and the first step in being able to like wield the magic is kind of to be aware of that like kind of inner quality,
Yep.
kind of become aware of how it works. Like in the same way that we would watch the teacher wizard wave the wand and like really kind of get a sense of what they're doing, you got to watch how the wizard within you is doing it already
Yep.
and get a sense of
Yep.
how it's working to be able to like take the wand, take the reins of the wand and start to wave it.
Yeah. 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 But it's
Yeah,
worth the effort, man.
yeah.
It's worth it.
It is. And this is really tied into the first key that we shared about you're creating everything. You're creating everything through your being. Just kind of takes that deeper.
You're creating your being all the time,
Mm,
right? And then everything's
yeah.
created through that. Yes.
You wanted to say something about what we at creating are exquisite at, in the context of being. Was it that? Was it like helping people to become aware
I think
of
it's
their
the
being?
next I think that I've seen lots of people help others become aware, self-aware. That's it's a whole thing, right? But I
Yeah.
think what um creating does so well is help you design new being, like design new thoughts. And then not just like, it's affirmations when you speak to this, when you just, I'm gonna say a new thing and that's gonna take me somewhere. No, what you
Mm,
are a genius at is helping people not maybe believing the words is like a step on the way, but then like knowing the new idea and then becoming the source. So like the first time I had the thought that swimming is fun, maybe I didn't believe it, but I became that swimming was fun. I was the source. I'm now the source of the idea that swimming is fun, the reality that swimming is fun. And then
mm,
I think when, being primary, what you teach allows you to step outside of any idea of what you should do or what you're supposed to do, or analyzing actions to get where you're going, to placing your attention on creating being. And then once you're in that, then the actions flow, right? You're
Yes.
from a place of love, and then life becomes art. It's just creating
Mm,
through
mm,
you, right? And so, I mean, that's like advanced level. That's creating mastery. Um, but that's
mm.
possible for everyone, right? You start with the awareness, you get into design, you get into becoming the source. Really, you're becoming, when you design a being, you're becoming a source, the source of a new reality. And you're designing the world that not just you are living in, the people around you are living in too. And that's our jam, right? Creating a more
Yeah.
beautiful world starts with a more beautiful being.
Yeah. The word designing is like, I can relate to, and more I'm surrendering to the design that feels like it's there,
Mm,
that that I'm discovering through lots of different ways, but letting go, and a deeper connection to something, like an implicit order, as David Bohm would say, the quantum physicist. There's an order to the universe that's unfolding,
mm,
and there's the potential for its unfolding.
yeah,
And as I wake up to that, and not just wake up to my experience,
yeah,
like the step one is to like wake up to the experience that you're creating,
yeah.
and then step two is like to become author in that experience,
Huh?
and then step three is to become like object to the whole process of authorship, and see that like there's not one static truth that you need to connect with at any point in time, and it can be a bit more fluid. And also like surrendering the idea of being the author itself, and just kind of like being this channel for a possibility. It kind of gets a little out there, but like the experience is easier, and it gets more effective and more powerful
Yeah,
that way. And so like for wherever a person's at, like if it's like even being subject to your thinking and stuff, you have to go through all the steps and
yep,
stages,
yep.
and the levels.
Mhm.
And as do I. It's not like I'm
Yeah.
at the higher level now, so you people down there, it's like,
All
no,
my
I
being
have to
is
go through.
conscious now.
Yeah, I have to go through the levels every day. Like
Yeah.
it's about a moment. But of course, the more that you do it, the more accessible it becomes, and the more you get to hang out there, and um, the more automatic. That's the thing that's so automatic for me to think about my being.
Yep.
If something's not going the way that I want, I like automatically think about who am I being that's creating this,
Yes.
which is kind of like not. It's kind of rare that people don't think that way. And I
Yeah.
definitely didn't used to think that way, but it's become like the modus operandi. It's become because I've held that idea on my mug. My being is primary, and that's what we're offering here today.
Yeah. It's
By
just
that
so
on.
beautiful and useful that once you learn it, um, it doesn't make sense to step out of it, right?
Yeah,
It's your brain
totally.
chooses it, new default. So, well, I want to point people towards the We Are Creating community. We're having conversations
What a
like
good
this
idea.
every single day, right? When we're talking about this stuff, we're talking about health and fitness this month. So, who are you being in your health and fitness? Um, and then we have Creator's Journey going on. And I love this conversation today because every week after JP is in dialogue with people, I come on and lead a sharing circle in our live calls. And I ask people, who was JP being? And it's a new thing to describe for everyone.
Mm,
And I love seeing people on the edge, and I love seeing them start to get it. And I love describing it and seeing them like, oh, that's what that means. Right. Because
mm.
this first access point, if they can describe who you're being, they'll be able to describe who they're being. And then they'll have a whole new access to this magic wand that will create, right, way more of the
Yeah.
they want in their life.
Yeah. Let me say something about that too before you go on. Like, when I create in conversation and in dialogue with people, and I'm somewhat conscious of my being, a lot of it's going to be unconscious, and there's some mastery because I've been doing it for so long. It's just what happens when you do something long enough. And then you have your sharing circle and you ask, who is he being? It could look like you're asking that question because you want people to see the way of being that I've got that they could then be,
They
and then that would be
copy it.
valuable.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Like maybe that's useful,
Yeah.
but way more important is that question forces people to become objective and look at being and
Right.
see being.
Right.
And so the point of the question is to teach people to become able to witness being in another person, in a conversation.
Yeah.
Because when you become more skilled at that, you become more capable of witnessing your own being and your
Yeah.
own experience.
Yeah.
And so that's I mean, you can feel my passion. That's why I love Creator's Journey so much and think it's such a special thing that we're doing for people, is because we're creating a context where people get to practice every single week in a live environment with me, with you, and with their peers in a 2-hour session, how to become more good, more better at this, at the seeing of being, and then the creating of being as well. So
Yes.
yeah, let's
Yes.
continue.
That was
I
that. Now I'm off
interjected.
on. Now I'm off. Yeah, into what you were saying. But yes, this is the only program I've ever seen that I just really I know that if you come and participate, you cannot escape unaware of your being of being.
Mm,
It's just not going to happen, right? You come,
nope.
the live calls, you come and witness or be in dialogue with JP, and then we talk about what happened, and then you go meet with a partner and you apply it to your own life right now, to yourself.
Yeah.
Practicing this every single day, becoming aware every single day. The new default way of being there, like being aware of being is a way of being, right? Like you get to keep
Yes.
forever. You get to keep that forever. And man, you know what is my favorite?
Tell me.
When I learned to be aware of my being, my ability to love myself went through the roof. I've been noticing that shift. Like there's one thing where you're like, oh, I did that. I did that. You're
Mm-hmm.
noticing you're
Mm-hmm.
doing all the time and you're like, oh, I love myself. But when you can see who you were being created it, and you can have
Mm.
compassion, right? For what it is that's
Well,
going on
yeah.
in you, that's creating your being. Oh my goodness. I swear that's like the love I was looking for in other people.
Well, that's the thing that everybody. I mean, maybe we've talked about it. We talked about doing only what you love and being loved. But like, when you start to look at who am I being that's creating this, it becomes a little bit edgy. Like it's the
First
danger,
confronting.
right?
Yeah.
It's very confronting. You could make it your fault, but then we have a lot of focus on
Yeah.
making sure that you don't get mad at yourself and that you actually love yourself. And then we become really good at loving yourself when you see who you're being. And that becomes like the biggest win for a lot of people in this work. So that's why I love people figuring out who they're being too, because it confronts them. I say it's like a psychological exfoliant. You just like brings all the shit to the surface because you're looking at it, you're like, oh my God, I'm being that. And it's like,
Yeah.
now you get to be nice with yourself about that instead of
Oh,
shitty. And that starts to, it's like the house of cards. All
yeah.
the inner judgment starts to fall apart. So
Yes.
we're
Yes.
at 40 minutes. I need a break before my client calls. So I need to say hello to some people. There are so many people on the live today. I want to say thank you and goodbye. Thanks, Colin, that you're loving the series. Mohammed, thank you. Daniel, thank you. Maureen, Bino, Pablo, Caitlin, Peter, Ugar, Emric, Jose, Para. I don't know if that's right. Rafa, Tamid, good to see you. Tony, Megan, Madra, Shalom, Zara, Noam, Noah, Emma, and Kita, Raj, Janelle. Thank you guys so much for attending live.
Beautiful.
And we'll see you Friday. Same time, same place.